Hi, my name is Lex Friedman.
True.
Hi, I'm Dreamt. You guys know me. This is my channel, Smile. I make shitty guides and upload clear videos and stuff like that. But more importantly, I am a giant shit poster in the community Discord that was started by our Lord and Savior Shizukats, which is linked in almost all the videos down below. So you can join that if you want to be a part of that community. And in being a part of that community, I have learned a shit ton about this game that the game does not tell you. And so to help me explain that to you guys, we have my co-host here, PrimROse's X.
What?
Introduce yourself.
I'm not your ex.
PrimROse's X.
No, Primrose is my ex.
Oh my god.
Hello?
That's the
Come
same
on.
thing. You being PrimROse's
Oh.
X and Primrose is your ex are the same statement.
No. The way you said it, it sounded like Primrose is your ex. You said Primrose is ex, you know. It's
Okay.
all good.
Well, I
It's a,
also
it's a
fucked
triple
Primrose.
entendre.
I didn't know when we were
Okay,
going to come out
well,
with this.
it works. It
I
works.
fucked Primrose
I'm
too.
okay with it. I'm
Before
okay
you
with
guys
it,
met,
man.
though, it was no foul play.
Water under the bridge. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
No big deal. So I mean, my name is like a triple entendre. It actually, when I first thought of it, it wasn't really about her being my ex, but sure. I just thought the character was really good, right?
Yeah.
Um, anyways, so I think today we're just gonna try to talk about a couple of topics that I think just like you said, new players probably don't have exposure to if they don't hang out on this Discord all the time. Even if they do, it's not easy to hold on to these concepts without actually using them, right?
Yeah.
So what do you want to start with?
The first thing, I mean, we can just do like a super basic overview because I imagine that most people who are getting into the game now haven't even watched like Shizukat's like how buffs work video. And so
Right, yeah,
we
that's
don't have to get
true.
like super detailed, but just an overall like so there's different categories of buffs. There's like three main categories to start with, and they also work into active or they work into buffs and into debuffs. There's passive buffs
Yeah.
and debuffs, active buffs and debuffs, and then special buffs and debuffs. And
So,
each
so
of those have a cap.
yep. Yeah, I think what we can do is we can bring up the graphic on MyDB right now so we can just look over it and go
Oh,
over
true.
that. I mean, this is another reason why doing this episode could be nice because we have so many different sources of information, and a lot of them they have little conflicts here and there. So, um, when it comes to the buff table, Meow's table right now is completely correct. Um, and in terms of damage formula explanation, Chaz kind of like uh, he sort of how do I say it? If you watch Chaz's video plus Shizukat's buff video, you'll have like a 90% correct, overview of how damage works and how buffing works.
Yeah.
But Chaz kind of oversimplified it a little bit, which kind of comes back to kind of bite anyone who are really trying to understand how the formula works because Chaz said that the damage scales linearly with your overall attack when the element in that formula that it scales linearly with is actually your total attack minus the enemy's defense. So I can actually show you how that is right now. And that's it. This is important because once the enemy's defenses become more significant, like for example these past few level 100 NPCs, and especially the coming one, the Burkane level 100 NPC, her defenses are sky high, right? So if you were thinking, oh, if I use this success tree that increases my damage by increases my elemental attack or my physical attack by this much, right? I should get this percentage increase in my attack, right? Let's say for example, you have 1,000 elemental attack, and then you equip an accessory that gives you 50 elemental attack more. You would think that it gives you 5% more damage, right? But in fact, it actually gives you more than that because you have to discount the enemy's defense. So I'll show you why that is. Give me a
Also,
sec.
just for you guys looking on screen right now, this
Yeah.
is a damage calculator website that most of the math for stuff like Chaz's clears is done on.
Yep. So
And I'll link it in the description as well if you want to play around on it. It's in
yeah, I mean,
Japanese, but you can auto translate it.
you and I actually we just talked about this yesterday, right? This corrected base stat, right? Where you have the maximum of 0.75 times your stronger stat plus 0.25 times the weaker stat. That's the adjustment. That's why,
Yeah, that's some
PrimROse.
crazy shit. That's kind
Yeah,
of what was the impetus for this whole thing was
yeah.
so
I mean,
something like an Ulbrich is the example you were using yesterday
yes.
has an enormous physical attack stat and a really shitty magical attack stat.
Hmm.
And right now, the only reason why mages fuck him up is because swords don't come with more magic attack. But
Exactly.
him himself, if both caster like if the scholar and the warrior were both using a weapon that gave them equal amounts of grade and magic attack, Ulbrich would out DPS most of them because it,
Yes,
it takes his physical attack stat into weight even when he's using magic because it's his highest
absolutely.
stat,
Yep. Yep.
which is the
And
most unintuitive shit I have ever heard.
and speaking of, I'm sure a lot of our listeners will are at least a little bit aware that in JP, there's this weapon series, part of the Soul, weapon series. It's called the Fortune weapons, and they have the exact same base stats across all weapon types, and across every single upgrade tier as well. And the kind of bonuses you can stack on top of them are also independent of weapon. They're just based on the uh the soul slots that you roll,
Yeah,
right?
so you
So
farm slots, or you
yeah.
farm souls from I believe the game board minigame
Yes.
at random, and then you can put those souls into the weapon slots,
Yeah.
effectively making a full elemental damage sword
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
bow or whatever.
And the caveat that we have to account for is just that there's a damage cap as well. So that's what makes it so that even if Ulbrich, theoretically his uncapped, unmitigated damage is greater than someone like Teresa's, because she's 3 hit, if you're using like a fully buffed up and well supported lightning comp, she's still gonna probably do more damage unless you have some beefed up accessory like Bargello A4 and you slap that on you slap that on Ulbrich, right?
Yeah, so there's going to be a period in the game upcoming once we get future fortune weapons, excuse me, and souls, where anything that has a single hit with a big potency is going to start falling off really hard, as things like Cyrus, who has a triple hit, is going to like skyrocket because hitting cap, you can hit cap right now with Cyrus's single hit, but
Yep.
hitting 50k each with his 3 hit is going to be 50% more damage. And so there's going to
Yep.
be that
Yep.
period in between when we get overcap abilities like Bargello and getting stats that can make us hit above cap.
Yeah. And even in the long run, what's really funny is that if you just look at how strong Bargello is, right? I can show you in a separate tab right here.
Please do.
So if we're just yeah, let's say so we got beef. Whoops, dagger.
I think
Dreamberry.
watching you use this is also super helpful because I was fucking around with this for like a good 30 minutes yesterday, just
The thing
ticking
is,
and unticking shit, trying to learn what each one did.
you can basically just check all of these, all the important ones, and then just be aware of which effects are being active, right? If it's an infeasible effect, then you can sort of discount that part of the ranking. But some of these no, some of these check marks they overlap between characters. So if you don't check them, you're just not going to be aware of certain effects that are going to be able to cause certain units to do more damage.
Yeah.
The other thing that you have to realize is that if units have passives that give them certain damage up, sometimes conditionally and sometimes not. Um, this calculator is going to factor in the unconditional conditions. So let's say, for example, someone already has damage up, that's already factored in. Whereas someone, if they don't, it doesn't. So when you give them damage up to the amount, to the percentage, it just scales everyone's to that amount, right? That's why you need to be really careful using this calculator, what you're actually doing. And we'll talk about this more in depth later on.
Yeah. So an example of that would
So,
be like Fior at max HP gets sword damage up. But if you drag
yes.
the slider to 30% sword damage up, you're not accounting for the difference in her getting that innately without having to wear an accessory versus one that's getting it given it to them through full accessories.
Yes, yes, yeah. And I mean that's why you have like this HP X% or less and stuff like that. There are a lot of little toggles that you can and this is this Sepoa B, Sepoa B, that's your passive ability.
Oh, okay.
So this disables it, which you don't want.
Yeah. That was the only one I wasn't clicking when I was fucking with it
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah. So I mean, these don't matter. So like for in terms of comparing characters, what you want to think about is like, oh, it's not like most characters they're giving like a res down debuff for themselves, right? But this part definitely matters, right? And this is active. This is passive, right?
Hmm.
And then active passive buffs are also relevant for characters like Fior, right? But the reason why I put this up is that if we're let's say for example we're trying to figure out like which units hit harder in the future, right? Well, in the future in a dagger comp, you're gonna have capped up passive up because you can run Bargelo with Richard, for example, and everyone has 30% passive up, right?
Yeah.
So any character that would potentially have 30% passive up, it would be redundant. I mean, obviously, for dagger comps, we don't have someone like Fior, but for a sword comp, that would be relevant because in a sword comp, you could also still run Bargelo for overcapping your damage cap, right?
Yeah.
So these are kind of the considerations that we're making when we're making these choices.
Also,
And
just to
these
be
don't
even
matter.
even more super clear, right now our damage cap is 100,000. So in a single hit, you can only do 99999. And
Yes.
with
So
Bargello, he has a passive, an active skill, and an A4 accessory that allows you to bypass that limit by certain thresholds.
yeah. And when we talk about the damage formula more in depth, we're going to see the effects of, certain characters getting benefited more from higher raw attack and certain characters being benefited more by awakening or from pets. So one side note that we can make quick note of is that pets actually add to your base stats, which is the first part of the formula here, right? And the reason why it's important is because this element shows up twice, right? Your base stat shows up here and also in your total stat, right? Your base stats plus your equipment stats plus your accessory bonus stats. And that means it's roughly you can say that your damage is roughly quadratic with your base stats and roughly linear with your total offensive stat. Even though this is not technically the full truth. The full truth is that
Yeah.
it's pseudo quadratic with your adjusted base stat, right? Based on this adjustment right here that we're talking about. And it's also pseudo-linear with your total offensive stats, being that the higher the enemy's defense, the more percentage gain in DPS you get from an increase in stats, right? The quick intuitive way to understand this is that let's say that your attack is, let's say your total attack is 500 and the enemy's defense is 500. This is some, crazy example that
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't occur in reality. But in that scenario, you would just do one damage. It wouldn't even matter what your, base stat is, right? If your displayed stat minus their stat is 0, then you're just gonna do one damage, which is the minimum damage you can do, not 0. Okay. But as soon as you do like let's say 10 more than that, right? There's just a 10 increase in your total attack stat. Now you're doing 10 times, whatever this is. So you're doing actually some, a couple hundreds of damage times, potency, blah blah blah. You'll do a few K damage, right? A few K damage versus one damage. That's thousands of, not thousands, tens, hundreds of,
Yeah. It
hundred
ramps
thousand
up real
percent
quick
increase in
after you
damage, right?
pass
Yeah.
that threshold.
Exactly. And so that is sort of the intuition you have there. And then on the opposite extreme is if the enemy's defense was 0, right? Let's say their defense is 0, then your damage scales perfectly with your attacking stat, which means that, let's say the prior example that I gave, when you're at 1000 attack, right? If you increase it by 50 by adding on an accessory, your damage would go up by just 5%, right? In this scenario, when the enemy's defense is perfectly at 0. So now you sort of understand the intuition for why the higher the enemy's defense is relative to your attacking stat, the more impact and the more important it is to increase that stat, right? And that'll come in handy once we think about, like adjusting weapons with grade. Like, what if this weapon has lower grade but higher stats? Or, like, should I go for stats in this case or more percent uh, more percent damage
Skill
up,
up
right?
or
More
damage up.
percent passive, yeah,
Yeah.
more percent passive damage up. Because in some cases, which is very relevant, is that you could be missing like 5% passive damage up, right? So you can either add, like a 5% emblem or a 5%, like elemental rune there, or you can just add an accessory that gives you like 50 stats, right? Well, it turns out, for endgame fights, in a lot of these cases, adding those 50 stats actually is going to give you more damage than adding, that remaining 5% damage up that you're missing, if that makes sense, right?
Because the defenses start scaling so high in the future EX fights.
Exactly. Yeah, like when these defenses are like a third or like, 40% of your offensive stat, that's gonna be very meaningful, right? And so we'll see here. We'll just jump back right here, right? So look at how crazy this is, right? Look at this crazy number right here. And actually, I haven't even. So this is outside of arena, and this is not scaled with grade. I mean, let's say we were scaling it with grade, and our total adjusted grade was like 2.5, right? And this grade adjustment will just give us this damage. So let's say this is Bargello's uncapped damage, right? So, but here's the thing: Bargello's active skill and his passive skill gives him a combined 50%, 50,000 more damage. His A4 gives him another 100k, right? And that means with a fortune weapon, he can only hit. Well, actually, not even with a fortune weapon. You have to get a limbo weapon that you can add two 50k slots to. So then now all of a sudden, let's say you're at 350k damage max, right? You get the 200k plus the 50k.
Yeah, the max you can hit per line is 350k at that point.
Yeah.
With
So
everything.
because this is double hit, the maximum he can do is still only 700,000 right now. I say only 700,000. That sounds really impressive. But you think about it, it's like, oh, his potency is so much higher. But if you look at, like one of our, biggest JP whales that posts these wonderful clears, right? You look at UMB's clears, you'll frequently see that even his Therian with this skill right here is going to do more damage than Bargello, right? And is super welled out, very well supported thief comp. And the reason why is just uh, the concept we talked about before, this damage cap, right? Because your Therian's damage is spread out across 6 hits, none of the individual hits are actually reaching damage cap. In fact, like, each single skill use with his divine feat, split across 3. So as long as, none of these hits go past like 150k or 200k, they're not going to hit cap, right? And
Yeah.
so let's say, Bartolo, he meaningfully could do, 1.1 million or something, right? And Therian can meaningfully do, like whatever, 720k, right? Like let's say 120k per hit. Well, he's going to hit that 120k per hit. And the reason why he gets all this benefit is part of this analysis that I actually put on Meow's website, right? So if we look at some of his new guides, I actually talked about this in brief.
We
Here?
call him Therian God.
Yes. Right. So I went over some of these things, and these are very important. So if Bargel is already hitting cap, right, he's not actually benefiting from potency up bonus, which is actually a weapon slot that you get on these fortune weapons, right? That's a 15% gain that Therian has that Bargelo just cannot, really take advantage of,
Yeah.
right? Crits as well. Crits is another 25% increase in potency, right? If you can guarantee it. And JP does give you ways to guarantee crits through pets, through memoir allies, through active skills, right? And through just, ramming your crit stat and using active buffs and using, accessories like Scarecrow A4, for example. You can pretty much near guarantee crits or actually just 100% guarantee crits. So this is a lot of additional damage, right? Just these 2 points alone, that's 1.15 times 1.25. That's so much more damage from multi-hit. And these are all unmitigated by cap, right? But these are just some of the things that you have to take into consideration when you're comparing units. And this brings us back to why this damage calculator can be useful, right? So if you're looking at your roster and you're looking at, upcoming units, or you're trying to see if you want to pull that unit, in order to judge how strong a unit is currently and also how strong they might be in the future, you might want to consider how strong are their, multi-hit nukes, right?
Yeah, since there's definitely going to be, even before it becomes like this or that with Overcap, there's going to be a period in the game where we're basically forced to use multi-hit nukes.
Absolutely. Do we want to go back and look at the buff table, or should we go over this formula real quick? Because we can do either. We've kind of just been skipping around back and forth.
I would say just keep it rolling.
Sure. Okay. Um, I know this kind of looks confusing. At least it's color coded, but the language use is a
Yeah,
little
auto
weird.
translated.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so let's just go back to this now, right? So we can do you want to use the Ulbrich example, or we can talk about PrimROse? It doesn't matter. I can
I
bring
think
up
I
some
think the Ulbrich
spreadsheets.
example is really good because it just
Sure.
shows how deeply it actually
Yeah.
changes things.
Yeah. All right. Let me bring up the spreadsheet real quick.
The beautiful double darken inverting the pictures.
I know. Colors are all inverted and stuff. It's like all black. Um, anyways. So Ulbrich, Ulbrich is a good example. So his magic stat is piss poor and his attack stat is really high, right? It's one of the highest among warriors. Um, and this is actually a good thing. So this is one of the, I talked to you about this yesterday as well. This is one of the hidden ways that um, Square Enix likes to balance these characters. Characters that have lopsided offensive stats get a huge benefit, right? Because even if you want to use them as dual type attackers, right? Both physical and elemental, they actually end up benefiting from having really lopsided stats. And I think you can explain it now too, right? So you want to just explain how we're going to do this calculation
Yeah, yeah.
to kind of make this comparison.
So the first half of it is that his attack stat is his highest stat between the two, regardless of what kind of attack he's using, be it sword or lightning. And so we're going to take his highest attack stat between the two, which is 434, and we're going to multiply it by 0.75.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? You can either use his, A0 stats, or you can
Or
use his
yeah, his
A1
A1
stats.
would add an extra 50 to that.
I did A1 yesterday when we did this comparison. We can just do that again. Let's just
Yeah,
do
sure.
that
We can do
again.
the A1s.
So 484, right? You can see my calculator, right?
Yeah, I can see your calculator, yeah.
Yeah, so 484 times 0.75. And you're going to add that to 287 times 0.25.
Yeah, his lowest stat times 0.25.
That's going to be 71.75, right? And I'm actually not sure if it rounds up or rounds down. Um, we can even assume that it rounds down. It doesn't matter. So that would mean that your overall corrected stat, the first stat in this formula, is going to be 434, right? This is for doing elemental attacks as an A1 character.
Yeah, it
Think
would be
about how
for either one, right? That would be your corrected stat for elemental attack and sword attack.
no. For sword attack, it would just be 484.
Really?
It takes a higher of the two, yes. Absolutely. It's not going to nerf you for, it's not going to use your
Oh.
elemental stat for, for physical. No. It's not going to juice you like that. It's
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah. So
yes,
you get
absolutely.
the benefit of the lopside on your main, and then it
Yes.
just also just doesn't fuck you on the other side.
It doesn't fuck you on the other side. You see here, the correction attack, it takes the maximum of these two elements. It takes the maximum of just your mono attack plus your pet stat and this corrected one.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. And but think about how crazy that is. Let's just look at these numbers real quick, right? 434 as your corrected elemental attack is the same stat as your A0 physical attack
Yeah.
stat. The same stat that you would use for sword attacks at A0. That's the power of your, elemental attack at A1. Think about how crazy that is. That is really the power of this corrected adjustment formula. And that's why, his raw, unmitigated, uncapped lightning damage is huge, right? You see this 260 potency right here. This is at
0 boost.
0 BP. At 3 BP, this is going to become 450, which is much stronger than, for example, Teresa's, which is a character we're going to compare it to, right? So let's say we go to Teresa right here. So Teresa, you don't even have to calculate. So we know that her
Because it's
magic stat
using
is
her main stat, yeah.
absolutely. So this is going to be 374 plus 50, right? And that's going to be 424. So this is already 10 lower, right? 10 lower than Orbix adjusted.
Yep.
424 versus 434. And then also her max boost highest damage is going to be from her 2 times single target skill at 3-star. So now we can actually just try to recreate this, right? So without even using the calculator, we can already mentally estimate, how their damages would compare. The way we would do it is if we knew the max potency of each move, we can just do that multiplication, right? We can say, what is the ratio between, their their adjusted elemental attacks, and what is the ratio between their potencies? Or rather, if you multiply those two things together, which number is bigger, right?
Yeah.
So for Ulbrich, that would be 434 times 450, right? So we can just jot this number down somewhere. So we jot this in. So this is Ulbrich, right? 115,300. Now we can try to find Therese, right? So Therese is gonna be right here. Oops, sorry. Both awaken, everything's the same. We run it. So Therese, max potency is 180 times 2, right? So 360.
Yep.
424 times 360. So this is without using the calculator, right? We're just doing mental math here.
Yeah, we
One,
used the
two,
calculator
three.
just to see what her potencies were.
Absolutely. So let's take the ratios of these two. And we see that Ulbrich should be doing approximately 28% more damage, right? 27.9594, whatever.
Yeah.
28% more damage, right?
In the world where they're both Unfortunate weapons with the same soul stats on them.
Yes. So let's see if this is actually the case now, right? And so we can actually do this comparison. Now I just take out this color and we just look. Now we see this number right here. This is Ulbrich's nuke, right? 302, 822, 2. Okay. Then Therese, you're way down here. Maybe in the next page, yeah. Where is she? Oh, we found her. Right. This number right
We
here.
found her way down there.
Yeah. Right. Let's take the ratio of these two numbers, right? 302,832 divided by 235,068. And we see roughly it's going to be around the same, right? That we estimate. We estimated 28%, and the calculator gave us 28.8%, so almost exactly the same. This is how you can mentally estimate, how strong a character is going to be relative to some other character. And this is the kind of intuition that you would get that would benefit you in the long run, because with this kind of intuition, you really don't need to use the calculator all the time, right? You just need to use the calculator once for a given enemy, and then you can sort of mentally compare, oh, like this character would do more damage, but how much more, right? And that kind of paints a clear picture to yourself, and that allows you to, plan for fights much more efficiently, right?
Yeah. But again, even in this case, Ulbrich would be needing to stack almost every single thing from like the overcap abilities that we have in the game in JP
Abs-
right now to be able to even
Absolutely.
reach that hit because his potency is a single hit.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And we didn't even talk about, the drawbacks of those because when we talked about our Bargelo example, he overcaps by so much that he can even afford to not use a fortune weapon and use a limbo weapon, which doesn't get the same overworld bonus, right, as a fortune weapon. And even despite that, he's going to hit cap. Well, whereas with Ulbrich, if we try to increase his cap to, like over 250,000, right? We
He's
might
gonna
need to
take that
adjust
hit in his attack.
in his potency, right? So you
Yeah.
wouldn't even reach that to begin with. Though, in JP, their newest set of weapons is an overworld bonus set that has the potential of getting up to 50,000 more cap. So it would be perfect for a character like Ulbrich. If you wanted to use him in your lightning comp, you could use that plus Bargelo A4 plus a 30% lightning rune, you know, and you'll probably do more than Therese, which is probably not saying too much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can see how this kind of stuff gets pretty fun, right? It's pretty fun to think about. There's a lot of nuance to it that you can play around with.
So all of this to be said, how do you feel about Joshua? Because you changed my
So,
mind on him just 100% with all of this.
so Joshua is uh, basically just the best sword unit for an RNG speed clear, right? If you're willing to sit there and you're just constantly rerunning it just to get his 20% chance of getting double cast on the nuke turns, then he's gonna do more damage than everyone except for A2 for sword. Uh, you know, absolutely
Yeah, and
by
in a
quite a lot.
situation where you can only bring swordsman, then A2 is not even in that picture anymore.
Exactly, yeah. So if you wanted to get like a really juicy, really pretty looking clear in Warrior EX5, it's possible that Joshua is going to get you to that, 7 turn clear, right? It's very possible actually, especially if you had his A4, you would definitely be able to get 7 turn very cleanly with a lot of overkill as well, which is, pretty funny. And we can see that in effect right now, right? So I can just show you right now just how much it matters. And keep in mind, Joshua is the only unit besides A2 right now that has self-active damage up, right? Right now I have this toggle up for everyone because this is the world in which we have Renew and Richard, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, we don't live in that world. So if we wanted to compare damage, we can just have this 15% up for now, jot down the numbers that Joshua is hitting, and then scale this down to 0 and look at everyone else's numbers, right? So we can do that real quick. Okay. And we'll just see just how incredibly strong Joshua is when he gets his dual cast.
Well, I mean, the person we'd be comparing it to just kind of also has that right now. A2 also has a 15% damage buff.
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah. So both of them actually have it.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
But in comparison to the other swordsmen, for sure.
Yeah. So let me just test this real quick. So A2, this is 633, right? I'm gonna remove this because she's already in berserk mode. So I'm trying to see if their berserk mode actually overlaps or just adds on to the 15%. So if this is 0, if it overlaps, that means this 633 should be the same number. And it's not. See, this 15% is adding that remaining 15% that she needs. You see what I'm saying?
Oh,
This is
okay,
sort
yeah.
of
Yeah.
this is sort of the thing that you have to keep yourself aware of. But there's no state. There's no state toggle for a character like Joshua. So you do need to keep this up for him. So when you put 15%, this is 15% up for him, right?
Yeah.
Not 30%. Um, so let's see just how. I mean, look, he's rank 8. This is in JP. This is the full meta in JP with crazy busted characters like ODOO and like Erica, right? And he's this high up. That's crazy. And this
Those are
will
two
this will turn
beefy
into
ass hits. Oh my god.
yeah, insane, right? I mean, obviously, these are not realistic damage numbers. We should be comparing these numbers percent wise versus our other EN characters, right?
Yeah.
But we'll see how huge that is. So let's just jot this down real quick, right? This is Joshua's 2 hit. It's gonna be 519, 6-2, right? And then Joshua 6. It's going to be 6 hit. Right? The 6 hit is also tremendous. Oh, this is his 4 hit, right? So it's,
Yeah, he's just gonna be out. He's gonna beat out everyone with every one of his moves.
yeah, absolutely. Every one of his moves is going to be higher than everyone else except for A2. But by a lot.
Also, I just saw his A4. It's just the sword Zonta version. That's sick as fuck.
Yeah, it's one of the best A4s in the game. And the reason why I don't say that lightly, because sword and dagger are the strongest, and that means they should be given additional weighting. And the reason why is because every single time they are an enemy weakness, you just bring those, and you would never bring anything else, right?
Yeah.
The only time you would have to choose between dagger and sword is if the enemy is weak to both. Then you're like, oh, has my dagger come stronger? Has my
Yeah.
sword come stronger? Yeah.
And we even have a little bit of that right now with the Largo Cup, where
Yeah.
people do full ice teams if they can't do dagger teams.
Yep.
Because ice is easier to hit, but the dagger just does so much more right now.
Yeah, the main thing that we have to be aware of is that there's opportunity cost, right? The opportunity cost is both in terms of the accessories for your breaker, right? Because they only have 2 accessory slots. So you should really be focusing on one weapon type to do that. And also in terms of action economy, right? We only have so many moves. So if you're using some of those moves to debuff sword or debuff dagger, you don't want to be doing both, right? It's just
Yeah.
not going to be as efficient. So this is also really high, right? 398. 560.9, right? Or whatever. 50. Oh gosh, my keyboard. Okay, so now we're gonna have to take off this 15%. Okay. All right. Well,
Since a unit
see
like 2B wouldn't even have access to that right now.
exactly. Yeah. A unit like 2B, we have to. I think it's gonna give her auto crit, so we don't even have to check this. It's gonna factor that in. So let's look at our EN units now. Where are they? Where art thou? Right.
There she is.
Oh, we found Tubi, right? So here's Tubi's problem. She's gonna ram cap, right? So
Yeah.
this number you're seeing here is irrelevant. We know she's always gonna hit 99999, right? And so if we compare this number to Joshua's, right? This is QB uh Savage Assault, right? What's it called? Savage Assault? Is that what it's
Yeah.
called?
I'm pretty sure.
32283. All right. And then I mean, we should be looking at the first one that's actually a reasonable multi-hit in EN. Like that, man, we have to look far, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I saw an
it's
Ulbrich
gonna
up
be
there.
fun.
That was probably his
Chris.
unbending blade, though, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, Ulbricht's we know is gonna be less than 2B because he doesn't have guaranteed crit. So here, the first one is Corrin, and then it's gonna be Wrath. They're around the same. So 289 and 284, right? So I mean, let's just compare this, right? Because right now we're at a point in time where if we can ram 99,999 two times, that's those are kind of A2 numbers, right?
Yeah.
We,
Yeah.
we don't even have to worry about this 4 hit and 6 hit being less potency. We're just going to choose this most of the time, right? And so the difference in this compared to any of these, this is almost twice as much. So let's say like the single hit caps of Ulbrich are doing, a little bit more than this, but they're over ramming cap by 20 or 30%. That means Joshua is literally going to be doing twice as much damage as Ulbrich, right? In all these scenarios. And in the scenarios where, we're a little bit further into the future, and we have characters like Richard, for example, and we have, like just better support for sword damage, we can compare, let's say, the 4 hit to Corin and Lars's, um, you know, 4 hit and 5 hits. And I mean, look at how much more damage that is, right? That's 415, 889 divided by, 2. I mean, we wouldn't be using Corin, so let's say 2, 284,
Come on, man.
000, right? 50% more damage. on Joshua compared to Wrath, right? Who everyone thinks is a super top tier. And again, we have to be very careful in saying, yes, we do have to RNG roll for this. But if you're going for a juicy speed clear, Joshua's going to be your guy. He's going to be your guy for a while.
And even in the case where you only hit like the 20% proc on one of each of the break turns, that's still going to average out to 3 out of the 4 hits, and you're still beating the fuck out of everyone else, even at that point.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because you have no problem, just ramming cap one time, right? And people are going to be ramming cap for a while. So does it matter if you're ramming cap with Joshua or you're ramming cap with, Corin or Ulbrich or whatever? No, it doesn't. But when it does proc, you're doing twice as much. So, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
yeah. And the cool thing is that Joshua is so fast. In the future, we'll be able to disable passives. So you can even disable Lars's, priority passive and use Joshua's ult to break. And then, you know, that's if you don't proc his thing. If you practice thing, you can use this as well, right? That's also 6 hits.
Yeah.
I think his ult is 6 hits. Is it 6 or I think it's 6, right? Let me try to look at it again. I do. You
Yeah,
do
it is
want
6
to.
hit.
You
Yeah.
do. I mean, his ult is really nice too because it gets ult sword damage up, which no one has basically. So if you actually have his level 10 to be 10% up, obviously most people don't. So you had his level 9, 5% up. It's still something,
Dude, you're
and
making
it
me want
breaks
to
really
pull for
well.
A5 on this now. This was like a character I was like, up until yesterday when we started talking about this, I was like, oh, free skip, easy, save gems. And now it's like, fuck, dude, I want this A5 really bad.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? If you got his A5 and you just kept doing speed clears for sword content, you would just get faster clears than Chaz, and you get faster clears than MC, like 100%. There's no way that they can even compare. Like, it doesn't matter how many A4s they have. They can't beat out the fact that you have the sword res down 20%, and they can't beat out this thing plus like it's 20%, like doing more damage than everyone. It's like you can't compete with this actually.
Oh, and with Sigrid, if you break fast enough, you can even like cap it and extend it.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Yes.
god.
Yes. That's what you would do, right?
Yeah.
That's what a lot of JP clears do. They run Sigrid and they run Joshua, Joshua A4, and the other slot they would use like Yanlong A4, and then pair that with Nicola A4. Now you have 30% passive physical defense down and 30% passive sword rest down. It's just like, oh,
That's actually
that
so crazy.
it's cracked. Yeah, very very cracked. But yeah, I mean, again, the great thing about this, at least, if you're not, the the banned M word or whatever, right? Let's say we're redacted,
Whoa.
right? We're
Whoa,
not
whoa,
not
wait,
talking
what,
about
what did you just say?
that. If we're not ordering pizza, we're not ordering pizza. And you're
Oh.
just manually using this, you're not gonna
Oh,
really get
M
hurt.
word. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Marco's Pizza is what
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
Okay.
Like let's say we don't have enough money to employ Marco's Pizza, right? We're just
Yeah.
manually delivering our own pizza. And we're not gonna have an issue with this because the cool thing about Joshua is that he gets the buff at the start of each turn, so you'll know when you're gonna
Yeah.
have this double cast
Exactly.
proc, right? So when you don't have it procced, you can just do your shield shaves accounting for not having it procced. When you do have it procced, do your shield shaves accounting for having it procced, right? It's never actually going to be an issue. You can, especially if you have a Joshua beyond A2, you don't have to even run a sword skill on every single slot, right? And you can also use his row partner to do something if if it comes down to it, and you
Yeah. If you ever
absolutely
need to dodge
yeah.
his 20%.
Yeah. So, and this guy, he's just the fastest swordsman. So he really doesn't need priority. He just gets speed everywhere. 30% speed up to start the battle.
Yeah.
He gets a
Fastest
speed
base
buff.
speed on top of having 30% speed up.
Yeah, yeah. He's he's like the degenerate gambler, right? When he hits it big, you're gonna win the lottery. Basically, it's gonna be so much damage.
And even
Um,
more to that like effect, you don't need something like a PrimROse ulti or a TT or an Alphen to enable him the way that you need someone to enable Therian to be able to kind of do the same thing reliably.
yeah, he's actually one of the most self-sustained, self-reliable, self-reliant DPS units you can have. He gives everything for himself. that you possibly need. And he's also very efficient, because most of the time you can't run more than 2 alt buffers, which means everyone else is going to be at 20%, but he can be at 30%. So this is an additional advantage that we're not even taking account for when we're doing this damage comparison, right? In reality, if we're trying to be fair to Joshua, we should give everyone else 20% and him 30%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he really does do that much more damage than everyone else when his double cast procs. It's very, very cool. It's just, very RNG. It's not going to be for your, Marco's Pizza delivery, but you can definitely get it to work in a speed clear. That's for sure. Very much, you don't have to roll as long as you're not dying in your speed clear, right? You re-roll a couple times, you're gonna get this, right? It's not gonna
Yeah,
be
it's
that
not too low.
Yeah, it's not. It's pretty fun.
And like I said, realistically, you only need to hit it like one of the 2 break turns for every break. It's not even yet to hit it. Like you don't have to keep re-rolling. Maybe for like the insane like optimal clear, you'll try to get it for both, but
yeah,
he only needs the 1 out of the 2 to be able to like still just outshine every other current warrior.
yeah, absolutely. And if you really wanted to, what you could also do is give him Hasumi A4. So this lasts for 3 turns, all before break, and try to proc this 20% chance on both break turns. Think about that damage.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's not even that bad. Okay, look, it's kind of bad. Okay, 4% chance, but come on, let's just go for it. Let's go. 4% chance of having it on both break turns, right?
My Yanlon race clear needed RNG that was less than a 4% chance. So
Yeah, I mean, look at Chaz tied MC
oh, for the
on
Varkin,
the for
yeah.
Barakin, right? He needed less than 1% odds for that, and I don't know how many times he retried for that. You know, and that was actually really funny
Yeah,
because
I remember
that
watching that
made
for the first time and being like,
yeah.
"Damn, dude!" I actually I made a meme of it where it was like the the show Invincible, and it was like
Yeah.
the look what they need to mimic a fraction of our power, and it was like Chaz doing 1,000 runs and MC
Yeah,
just wailing.
MC's like, okay, I'm just gonna pull the pity again on Leon. I need that A1. Oh man, yeah, that was really hilarious. But yeah, actually, the funny thing is, don't tell Chaz. Hopefully, he doesn't listen to this episode. Chaz told me in secret that MC he knew that MC could get 1 turn less than him. MC could get what was it, an 8 turn clear that they got, or is
Oh,
it
okay.
9
Yeah,
turns?
if he went for the RNG clear, he could have beat him.
No, well, MC didn't even need that crazy RNG. MC, if he optimized a little bit more, um, he would have just beaten Chaz. He would have gotten 1 turn faster. But Chaz didn't want to tell MC. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because if he told MC, he wouldn't have. They wouldn't have tied. Because there was zero chance that Chaz could do that, right? He needed less than 1% to even get, what, 8 turns, right? So don't tell Chaz. Hopefully he's not listening.
Oh no, we'll all keep it a secret. I mean, at this point, we're like 50 minutes in. If you're still listening, you're probably
Wait, is it don't tell Chaz or don't tell MC? I'm sure MC might tune in, so maybe MC will get mad at Chaz regardless. Yeah, pretty
okay.
fun.
Well, we covered buffs, we covered caps a lot, which we got really into that. I really liked that. We got into the
Yeah,
math, the damage calculator, how to use it responsibly, not just oh my god, look at that number. You have to look at it realistically, the number of hits, what you have to sacrifice to be able to get that overcap if you are going for overcap, and the fact that overcap is going to be there's going to be a big gap between when we get fortune weapons and souls and when we get Bargello and Limbo.
yeah. Oh, you know what? I can actually make, I can retroactively make like a case study with this because I think this is a pretty decently poignant example. Let me see if we can just talk about like the way I accessorize for Largo, right? Because I think that makes it easy to understand. I'm not sure if I still have the right accessories here. Oh, I think I do. Okay. Do you see my screen?
I do, yeah.
Okay. So
We're all zoomed in on it
I'm
too, automatically.
yeah. I'm playing on my phone right now, by the way.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
uh,
That's actually
my
my
iPhone.
mouse you see on screen right now.
This is
Yeah.
my accessibility, iPhone mouse. Yeah. Telepathically controlling it using my mind. Um, anyways, so one of the main considerations I had to make in my clear is how do I get the highest chance of doing an 8-turn clear, right? I want to just be able to kill Largo before he comes out of break. Because why not, right? And the main considerations I had to make were where do I put all my damage accessories to do that? So there's a balance between expected value and variance, right? How
Yeah.
much variance am I going to take so that I actually get, you know, that RNG clear? Because it's possible for you to have a higher expected value and also to have the higher range of your variance produce a lower result, which results in you not being able to eight turn at all, or actually having a lower chance of eight turning despite having a higher expected value, right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And that is the main consideration that I had to make. So I thought about, a couple different scenarios that I could run. Um, I thought about, you know, putting this Tatter Sachet on A2, maybe even giving a row partner with Wingate, like
Also, just
maybe,
for more context, since I know what all of these accessories do, a lot of people
yeah,
don't. Tattered
yeah,
Satchel is Scarecrow's A4, which gives
yep,
you a shit ton of crit. And so basically, the variance that he's waiting here is the difference between putting more flat damage on Therian for a more balanced amount of hits, or putting more crit on him and going for that higher 0.25 potency, right? 25% damage
yes,
potency
yes,
from a crit
yes,
by putting more crit on him instead of more flat stats.
yeah. So there were actually, a lot of considerations I had to make jointly, right? So one of the considerations is that I actually made my Therian and my A2 a little bit slower. My Therian has some speed notes unlocked. My A2 has none,
Yeah,
right? But
that's how
A2
mine
has a
goes.
self speed buff. But then I gave Falco all the speed notes. So my Falco is actually naturally going to be faster than my Therian, right? And I also wanted my Therian and A2 to have a little bit more sufficient bulk, right? So in reality, I actually could have done further speed adjustment using armor, but I forgo that and just went with let me just go back here. Went with giving him his own A4, which gives him speed. And this allows him to outspeed Falco as well. And the main damage consideration I had to make is that Codas itself does not give physical stats, right?
Yeah, it
Um,
gives
both,
30%
yeah, both of
passive
these,
physical.
yes, but both of these accessories do. This one gives 40, and this one also gives 40, right? This one gives 60. This is Nicola A4, and this one also gives 60. So, I mean, in reality, what I also could have done is try to give this one to Therian and give this to Falco. But just think about that, right? If Falco's already faster, can I actually still make Therian faster than Falco on the break turns with the armor? No, right? Because this accessory is going to give 60 speed.
Yeah.
So if I just was really wanting this extra 20 attack, I actually can't even get it, right? Because I need this on Therian to outspeed A2 after Berserk, right?
Yeah.
So
And the reason for this
these are
being that
yeah.
Therian splits his attack between a potential 6 attacks, whereas Falco and A2 don't really have. Well, I guess A2 has that option, but you wouldn't want that. But
Right, right.
Falco
I
doesn't have that
want,
option.
yeah, I want Therian to break because A2 does more damage than Therian, right? I want, the first hit out of six mitigated at half damage to be Therian's hits and not A2's.
Yeah.
That's why I need Therian to be faster than A2.
Or
So
even Falco's.
you can sort of see the puzzle pieces coming together. So you got to think about, what your goals are, what your restrictions are, and how you achieve your goals, how you maximize or min-max given the restrictions. By thinking about your restrictions first and also your goals at the same time, you can quickly narrow down the potential choices that you have, right? Um, the reason why Codas is better on A2 is that exactly that point that we made with the damage formula, right? Because Therian's attack stat is so much lower than A2's, he gets additional benefit from increased stats, right? A2 gets less benefit from increased stats, but she gets a lot of benefit from 30% more on that on that entire buff stack that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
The one that included passive uh, and active, right? So that's like, 30%, 30%. So everyone else is only getting 10% on that stack. So A2 is getting 20% more, right? Because this one caps, but everyone's getting Linux 10%. The other consideration that we have to make is that A2 herself, her Berserk skill, gives her 15% active crit up, right? TT's buff skill, right? Her General's March
Oh, it also does. Yeah.
also gives 15%. So actually A2 caps her active, right? Therian does not have a self-buffing crit skill, and I was not able to fit in both her 0 BP and 3 BP General's March. So both of these guys could only get 15% active each, right? On that one turn. They got 1 BP, and they also got the 15% active buff, right? So that's why Therian having this headed statue is good. I wanted to go for a clear that had the highest odds of me hitting, the high roll, right? So therefore, I actually really wanted both of these guys to have a reasonable chance to hit a lot of crits.
Yeah, to hit
And
the
so
crits.
I needed to balance, their crit chances together. Therian, if you look at his raw crit stat, right? Without without Scarecrow A4, it would only be at 368. With it, it's 468. A2's natural crit stat, without any, much crit up at all, is going to be much higher than Therian's, right?
I want to say it gives even more crit on break.
Yes, and that's the
Yeah.
main, that's the main advantage of Scarecrow A4 because it gives you a passive 30% crit rate up on break, right? And that's huge. And so this is really the reason why I have the accessories the way they do, right? It's you can see how with the given restrictions, maybe, it didn't take me too long to come out with this, this configuration of accessories. But the kind of thought process and the kind of concepts that we used from our discussion earlier in our talk is exactly the kind of thought process that I used in order to, properly accessorize for this fight. Right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. And then, we have additional, quirks, that are particular to this fight. For example, Falco having Hasumi A4, right? And this is just to give us the dagger damage up that will last 3 turns. And that includes both the break turns, right? So that we can maximize damage here. We also had 9S A4 giving TT capped lightning damage up, and we had Therese A4 on Cyrus. And this allows Cyrus and TT, just these two guys basically, to two-turn both of the first phase ads along with Therian's help. Because what Therian did is he shaved off six shields on the top ad, right? And the bottom ad. And Alphen shaved off 4 shields on the bottom ad. And that allowed Cyrus to barely KO with his ice move on the second turn, which actually, since the bottom ad, which is the ad that covers, is broken by the time Cyrus uses his ice skill due to Alphen's help on turn 1, it actually allows us
To start pre-shaving on
to start
Largo.
pre-shaving on Largo. Yeah. So these are all, every single one, almost every single accessory is pretty meaningful here, and they all achieve their purpose. Um, I think it would have been better if I actually showed the video instead of just, pointing left, right,
No, I
bottom
think
up.
I think the visuals
Here, here.
are already more than
Yeah.
enough.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you two things that I thought of while in this conversation is do we know how crit works?
We we don't know the crit formula yet. We've been trying to figure that out empirically for a while. In theory, we could probably find out a formula if we had a very willing and very hardworking JP player on our side. But unfortunately,
Wow. Shots fired. Frog, grape.
unfortunately, I don't think we have anyone who's willing to sit through this. Even though figuring out the crit formula would be very beneficial for us. And no shots fired on Frog and Grape. They're not the biggest whales out there. I think if we had a big whale, by the time our EN whales get to JP, we talk about whale not in terms of just spending, but in terms of the amount of hours they're willing to spend grinding out, a bunch of extra weapons just for testing, right? Then we could get very fine granularity
Yeah.
for for our testing. Even right now in EN, I think we can get a better understanding of the rough shape of the crit formula, but we just don't know how it works on on the right extreme, right? For really high crit values, because we don't have access to fortune weapons, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and just so the audience is aware, fortune weapons allows you to also, you know, use your rolled slots for crit up, and you can get an extra like, what is it, 300 crit or something, right? Or possibly even 400. I don't remember off the top of my head, but significantly more crit stat than what we have. That's the thing.
Okay.
And there's a trade-off, right? I mean, the reason why this is really cool, really good question, Dream, is that because guaranteeing crit or near guaranteeing crit is an extra 25% more damage, right? Compared to not critting at all. There's an inflection point between, trying to go for crits versus trying to go for extra stats on your weapon, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's a conscious choice you would be making on your fortune weapons. And if only we knew the formula, we could be,
One day.
super try-hard nerds and get the extra, 6% expected value damage. One way or another, something like that.
Okay. And then the other one was something that's been said around the Discord a few times now, but I
Yep.
have not seen it outside of, that sphere, is that defense doesn't matter. Can you do a quick run through of an explanation on why it's not super important?
Absolutely. I can even give a visual example right now. Let me just go ahead and show you.
Hey there, it is Dream from post-production of making this the recording of this podcast. And so from this point in the podcast, we basically go into Varkin to show how little defense stats actually change, how much damage you're taking in that environment where it's kind of in a vacuum. Grades don't matter in Arena and stuff like that. So it's just the raw stats just to get a visual of it. And in testing this, we actually found out a little bit more about defense than we originally had known. So I'm just going to skip straight to our conclusion after having tested this for the next 40 minutes to just save all of that time. So basically what we found out is that base defense stats and base elemental stats are weighted a little bit more heavily than gear stats, but that range that it affects it. So let's say our example that we were trying to use here was Ulbricht's defense stat, elemental defense stat against Varkin in a vacuum is, I think it's like 230, around there. And then Agnes's is about 366. Don't quote me on these numbers, but basically it's about a little bit more than 100 apart. And the factor and defense that ends up providing is around 5%. And the closer that two units are in that natural base defense, which will be factored in with Awakening 1 and Pet, if you have those two things, that range basically deviates between like 1 and 5%. And then when it comes to the raw stats that you add onto yourself through upgrading armor from having nothing on to having almost double what your base stats is, that range only covers about 10% more damage reduction. So an example of this would be at the very start, let's say that Agnes is wearing literally 0 gear. She's going to get hit for around 1,050 damage, right? Let's say we put her then in max Berserk elemental defense gear. I think it's the duelist set, where she has more than double that elemental defense, something like near 800. Then in that scenario, she is taking 10% less damage or more than double the stat. So in jumping from something like an Origin to a Berserk, that the difference in what you're going to be hit is so minimal that it's almost not worth worrying about. In the overworld, we have grades to factor in, which add a little bit more nuance to it. That's why we were testing in Arena, just to see if the raw stats actually mattered. And it basically, we still had the same conclusion, is that defense really doesn't stop things. To put it in even more perspective, Ophelia, who was also in that lineup getting hit by that dark nuke, she has 20% dark res down, and that seemed to be affected almost flatly. Like it would just do 80% damage to her instead of the 100% damage it was doing to everybody else, right? Like regardless of factoring in the actual defense stats, because her natural defense, elemental defense stat is really close to Agnes's, so we could get a really clear gauge on that one. So basically, resistances against elements are your best defense. The difference between you being naked with no gear versus being fully geared in the newest defense set, the difference in damage you're going to take is less than the difference that your passive resistance against that element would give you if your character has, resistance against that specific element that you're in the fight for. So while it is important to, keep your characters geared, right, it is extremely less important to make sure that you're actively gearing yourself up every single patch armor-wise. The weapons still make huge differences. They make leaps and bounds in both the grade and whatever side stat they're upgrading, like Berserk upgrading physical attack. But yeah, the conclusion is basically that defense doesn't really matter, and that your base defense is weighted just a little bit more heavily than your armor defense. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed our ramblings. I hope you learned something. We might do this again in the future with different topics, and if you want that to happen, let us know in the comments. Of course, you can find us both inside of the Discord linked below. Once again, I'm Dreamt, and he is PrimROse is my ex.
Wait, hold on, 1 second. Let's ask ChatGPT real quick.
X-Files and Dreamscapes.
Oh my god, that is so fucking classy, bro. What the heck is this?
Unraveling the heart and mind with PrimROse and Dream.
Wow. How poetic.